The puja to Dakshinamurti. Om Mama Upatta Samastha-Duritakshayatwara Shri Parameshwara Pritiyartham Vidya Siddhiyartham Cha Aham Idam Dakshinamurti Pujam Karishye. Om Gajananam Bhutganadi Sevitam Kapit Jambupal Sarabhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Panchakam. Om Sumukhaya Namaha. Om Ekadantaya Namaha. Om Kapilaya Namaha. Om Gajakarnakaya Namaha. Om Lambodharaya Namaha. Om Vikataya Namaha. Om Vignarajaya Namaha. Om Vinayakaya Namaha. Om Dhumaketave Namaha. Om Ganadhyakshaya Namaha. Om Phalachandraya Namaha. Om Gajananaya Namaha. Om Bhaktatundaya Namaha. Om Shurpakarnaya Namaha. Om Herambhaya Namaha. Om Skandapurvajaya Namaha. Om Shri Siddhivinayaka Swamine Namaha. Om Spatika Varnam Maukta Kimakshamalam Amrita Kalasha Vidyam Jnanamudram Karagre Dadata Murga Kaksham Chandrachudam Trinetram Vidrita Vipita Bhusham Dakshinamurtimide. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye Mahyam Shriyam Medham Pragyam Prayachya Swaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye Mahyam Shriyam Medham Pragyam Prayachya Swaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye Mahyam Shriyam Medham Pragyam Prayachya Swaha. Om Omkara Simha Sarvendraya Namaha. Om Omkarodhyana Kokilaya Namaha. Om Omkara Nida Shukaraje Namaha. Om Omkararanya Kunjaraya Namaha. Om Nagaraja Sutajanaye Namaha. Om Nagaraja Nijalayaya Namaha. Om Navamanikyamadhyaya Namaha. Om Navachandra Shikhamaniye Namaha. Om Nandita Shesha Maunindraya Namaha. Om Nandishadimadeshikaya Namaha. Om Mohanala Sudhasaraya Namaha. Om Mohambuja Sudhakaraya Namaha. Om Mohandakarataranaye Namaha. Om Mohotpalanabho Manaye Namaha. Om Bhaktagyanabdhishidanshave Namaha. Om Bhakta Jnana Trinalayaya Namaha. Om Bhaktamboja Sahasranshave Namaha. Om Bhaktakeki Ghana Ghanaya Namaha. Om Bhaktakairavarakendave Namaha. Om Bhaktakoka Divakaraya Namaha. Om Gajananadi Sampujyaya Namaha. Om Gajacharmo Jwalakritaye Namaha. Om Ganga Dhaval Divyangaya Namaha. Om Ganga Pankila Satchataya Namaha. Om Gaganambara Samvitaya Namaha. Om Gagana Mukta Murthajaya Namaha. Om Vadanabdajitabja Shriye Namaha. Om Vadanendus Puruddishaya Namaha. Om Varadanaika Nipunaya Namaha. Om Vanavirojwalatkaraya Namaha. Om Vanavasa Samullasaya Namaha. Om Vanaviraika Lolupaya Namaha. Om Tejaf Bhunjaganakaraya Namaha. Om Tejasamapi Bhasakaya Namaha. Om Vineyanam Tejaf Pradaya Namaha. Om Tejomaya Nijashramaya Namaha. Om Damitananga Sangramaya Namaha. ॐ दर्हासजिताङ्गनाय नमः। ॐ दयारससुधासिन्धवे नमः। ॐ दरिद्रधनसेवदये नमः। ॐ क्षीरेन्दुस्फटिकाकाराय नमः। ॐ क्षीरेन्दुमुकुटोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ क्षीरोपहाररसिकाय नमः। ॐ क्षिप्रैश्वर्यफलप्रदाय नमः। ॐ नानाभरणमुग्धाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ नारीसम्मोहनाकृतये नमः। ॐ नागब्रह्मरसस्वादिने नमः। ॐ नागभूषणभूषिताय नमः। ॐ मूर्तिनिन्दितकन्दर्पाय नमः। ॐ मूर्तामूर्तजगत्वपुषे नमः। ॐ मूलाज्ञानतमो भानवे नमः। ॐ मूर्तिमत्कल्पपादपाय नमः। ॐ तरुणादित्यसङ्काशाय नमः। ॐ तन्त्रीवादनतत्पराय नमः। ॐ तरुमूलैकनिलयाय नमः। ॐ तप्तजाम्बूनदप्रभाय नमः। ॐ तत्त्वपुस्तोलसत्पाणये नमः। ॐ तपुनोडुपलोचनाय नमः। ॐ यमसंयमसत्कीर्तये नमः। ॐ यमसंयमसंयुताय नमः। ॐ यतिरूपधराय मौनिने नमः। ॐ यतीन्द्रोपासविग्रहाय नमः। ॐ मन्दारहाररुचिराय नमः। ॐ मदनायुतसुन्दराय नमः। ॐ मन्दस्मितलसत्वक्त्राय नमः। ॐ मधुराधरपल्लवाय नमः। ॐ मञ्जीरमञ्जुपादाब्जाय नमः। ॐ मणिपट्टोलसत्कटये नमः। ॐ हस्ताङ्कुरितचिन्मुद्राय नमः। ॐ हठयोगपरोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ हंसजप्याक्षमालाढ्याय नमः। ॐ हंसेद्वाराध्यपादुकाय नमः। ॐ मेरुशृङ्गतटोल्लासाय नमः। ॐ मेघश्याममनोहराय नमः। ॐ मेधाङ्कुरालवालाग्र्याय नमः। ॐ मेधापक्वफलद्रुमाय नमः। ॐ धार्मिकान्तर्गुहावासाय नमः। ॐ धर्ममार्गप्रवर्तकाय नमः। ॐ धामत्रयनिजारामाय नमः। ॐ धर्मोत्तममनोरथाय नमः। ॐ प्रबोधोद्गारदीपश्रिये नमः। ॐ प्रकाशितजगत्र्याय नमः। ॐ प्रज्ञाचन्द्रशिलाचन्द्राय नमः। ॐ प्रज्ञामणिवराकराय नमः। ॐ ज्ञानान्तरभासात्मने नमः। ॐ ज्ञातृज्ञादिविदूरगाय नमः। ॐ ज्ञानज्ञाद्वैतदिव्याङ्गाय नमः। ॐ ज्ञातृज्ञादिकुलागताय नमः। ॐ प्रपन्नपारिजाताग्र्याय नमः। ॐ प्रणतार्थ्यब्दिबाडवाय नमः। ॐ भूतानां प्रमाणभूताय नमः। ॐ प्रपञ्चहितकारकाय नमः। ॐ यत्तत्त्वमसि संवेद्याय नमः। ॐ यक्षगेयात्मवैभवाय नमः। ॐ यज्ञादिदेवतामूर्तये नमः। ॐ यजमानवपुर्धराय नमः। ॐ छत्राधिपतिविश्वेशाय नमः। ॐ छत्रसामरसेविताय नमः। ॐ छन्द्रशास्त्रादिनिपुणाय नमः। ॐ छलजात्यादिदूरगाय नमः। ॐ स्वाभाविकसुखैकात्मने नमः। ॐ स्वानुभूतिरसोददये नमः। ॐ स्वाराज्यसम्पदध्यक्षाय नमः। ॐ स्वात्माराममहामतये नमः। ॐ हाटकाभजटाजूटाय नमः। ॐ हासोदस्तारिमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ हालाहलज्जलोद्गलाय नमः। ॐ हार्दग्रन्थिविमोचकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिस्वामिने ॐ श्रीमेधादक्षिणामूर्तिस्वामिने नमः। ॐ श्री दयानन्दसद्गुरवे नमः। ॐ श्रीमहेशानन्दसद्गुरवे नमः। Okay, shall we do the Dashamantra with the starting the puja? Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarastvandhakaro Vai Rukarastvan Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shanno Mitra Shamvarunaha Shanno Bhavat Varyama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnururukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmam Avatu Tadvaktaram Avatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram. Om Shanti 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 Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Yaschandasam Rishabho Vishwarupaha Chandobhyo Dhimritaat Sambabhuva Samendro Medhaya Aspranotu Amritasya Devadharano Bhuyasam Shariram Me Vicharshanam Jihva Me Madhumattama Karna Abhyam Bhuri Vishruvam Brahmanaf Koshosi Medhaya Pihitaha Shrutam Me Gopaya. Om Shanti 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 Aham Rikshasya Reriva Kirtif Prishtam Gireriva Urdhupavitro Vajiniva Sramritamasmi Dravina Gumsa Varchasam Sumedha Amritokshitaha Itirtishankor Vedanu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Apyayantu mama angani Vak Pranaschkshuh Shrotramatho Balumindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirteya Upanishatsu Dharmaha Te Mai Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vang me manasi pratisthita mano me vachi pratishtitam aviravir maedhi vedasya maani istha shrutam me ma prahasihi anenadhitena ahoratran sandadhami ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami Tanmam avatu tadvaktaram avatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. भद्रं नो अपि वातयमनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यसेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं ह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So just picking off from where we left off 2 weeks ago on June 6th. So we are just about at the end of the section in the Alata Shanti Prakaranam, where Gaudapada ji has explained to us in more detail and with more help to us the main lingam, the main sadhana, if you want to call it that, that I think we will all need to resort to, need to follow sometime in our life or the other, whenever we are ready. It's kind of like a, it's a path that goes through multiple doors, and so these advanced verses and the concepts contained in these advanced verses is like some of the final doors before you enter the sakshat drishti of the Atma. The funny thing, I mean, if you know the temple architecture, you know that it is made in the form of the human body, where you have Annamaya Kosha, where outside traffic can go on. Then you start to go inside, as though you're going through a door, if you may, and so you finally lead up to where the vigraha, the altar is contained. And as you know, we have talked about this. This is a beautiful way to understand that in the temple architecture, the vigraha is contained in a very dark room, because it signifies that it is enveloped in darkness. So if you look at an altar like Dakshinamurti, which is inside the sanctum sanctum, and you go through the door, and finally you find that it is completely dark. If you're allowed to go, not everybody is even allowed to reach there, but if you're allowed to reach there, then you find that it's completely dark. And the murti, the vigraha also is in dark. It's in dark stone, not visible to the naked eye. But then what the pujari, what the priest in the form of a teacher, this is the symbology of the teacher, what it does it shows you the with a lamp the outlines of the altar, and so it shows light on it, and you see that, and then you can say, my goodness, I didn't see this before, because you could not, it was all dark. And so the symbology of that in this teaching is that until the teacher shows you the outline of your own self, a very interesting thing, really, just amazing. I've always been fascinated by this. That how is it it's not possible for me to know the altar of my own self? I feel I know who I am and very familiar with me and so on. It's just that because my understanding of the reality of myself is enveloped in ignorance, which signifies darkness, until the teaching reveals it, I don't see it. Don't see it. And the 10th man's story is a classical one, really, because it answers the question, how is it that I cannot see myself? I can understand that I cannot see a vigraha inside a dark room. That I can understand. But that the self is not like that. It's me. How can I not see myself? So here, this doubt is very well addressed by the 10th man story. And the 10th man story says it is possible that you do not appreciate certain aspects of yourself that reveals who you really are. Nothing has been lost. You're looking around for a 10th man. You are the 10th man. And so it's possible. You can now understand, how is it possible that I'm searching for myself? You're searching for yourself because your self-estimation, your conclusion, your thinking is based on some wrong ideas. That's all. So inside there is a door inside. And so here really speaking, all these advanced verses are to see whether I'm passing through that door or not. And so here, the final lingam, the sadhana, is which is the most important hint given by Ishvara to us, most important sadhana, is to examine the similarity and contrast between the dream state and the waking state. This is what it has to attain to. You have to see how it is it's like dropping hints all over the place, like the hoofs marks of that cow that has been stolen. And so this is what it is. And so you have to pass through these advanced doors to recognize. This is the reason I am wandering around in the Manomaya Kosha and the Anandamaya Kosha, and I am not allowed to go through the secret door that allows me to understand a sakshat drishti of the Vigraha. This is how it is. So with that, let us revise. We were doing verse number 42, and so this section, and I think I'll finish this today. So this section from 42 to 46, which ends this section of the advanced comparison between dream state and the waking state. And this is the very essence of the Mandukya Upanishad. It's not as though it's a different topic altogether. So Gaudapada is giving a karika in independent verses which simply unfolds the vision of the Mandukya Upanishad. So here he says in verse number 42, which we had started, so let's continue on that. Upalambhat samacharat asti vastutvadinam jatihi tu deshita buddhaihi ajatehi trasatam sada. So in English translation of that is that the creation is taught by the wise for those who are afraid of the birthless reality. Ajatehi trasatam is the who are afraid, means that your mind doesn't allow you to even enter the thought of birthlessness, that this has never come about. This is why the previous section goes into a very detailed, logical, saying, okay, if it was born, then how will it be born? Was it there before? It was not there before. How can something come out? We went through all of that in the first section. Now the application of that in the comparison between the dream state and the in the waking state is now being done. So here, Gaudapadaji, this is an important thing for us to see, really, that the Vedas talks both about creation and non-creation. So how can that be? How can how can two different, it's like saying darkness and light. When there is no darkness, there is light. When there is no light, there is darkness. You cannot have darkness and light coexist. So you tell me one or the other. One time you're saying you're creating, and the other case you're saying you're not creating. How can that be? The reason is, and this is exactly the structure of the Vedas, this is something we should be very clear about. The structure of the Vedas in Karma Kanda and Upasana Kanda and Jnana Kanda is that Karma Kanda is meant for people who are not ready. It's like saying that some kind of a walking aid is meant for people, a stick or something like this is meant for people who cannot walk by themselves. So you have to find the right kind of support. And for a person who doesn't need the support, you don't talk about that. But a person that needs the support, you have to take that seriously. You cannot tell someone who is injured and say, what are you doing about all these support? Just get rid of it. You can't. It doesn't make sense. Nobody would say that. So here's, this is what Gaudapada is saying, that listen, creation is taught by the wise, means the Vedas. The wise people who follow the Vedas, the structure of the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita also. For those who are not ready, when you're saying afraid, means who are not ready. Who are not ready, who are afraid to fall down. It's true that if you don't have the right support, you're going to fall down. So you're afraid. Similarly, on riding a bicycle, when the youngster is starting to ride the bicycle, if you remember this, we all went through this. We keep telling our parents, whoever was helping us to ride the bike, how to ride the bike, saying, please don't leave me. Okay, don't. So we said, no, I won't leave you. No cruel father or mother will just simply lie about it. He will not leave until he is sure that the person knows how to ride. Then you don't need the father. And this guy has gone, half a mile down the road and shouting and happy and so on. And the parents are clapping. Everything is going well. But at that time, until the person doesn't know how to balance the bike, you have to take it very seriously. So that's what it is saying. He says the creation is taught by the wise for those who are afraid of the birthless reality and who assert the reality of the creation because of its experience and orderly behavior. So what this means is we have to be sympathetic to ourselves. So here we are the teacher and we are the student of ourselves. And we have to baby ourselves by fully knowing at one time I will be free. Until then I have to take myself seriously. Reason with me. Reason with myself. And you need to empathize with yourself. Why is it that you don't get it? It's not like you berate someone and say, you're so stupid. You've been listening to this for so long and you still don't get it. And you're not capable of understanding Vedanta. That's not very helpful to yourself. Others don't say that. Really, our own mind is the one that accuses us. How long have you been studying this? How many classes you've taken and so on? You're still the same and so on and so forth. Is it reasonable that you're going to now suddenly change and understand this? Your mind gives you all these kinds of things. And this is just like a father and a mother who are saying, how long have you been riding a bike? You still don't get it. This is so stupid. Everybody else is riding a bike. How come you can't do it? No. You have to understand why the person is having some difficulty in balancing. So here Gaudapadaji gives two very beautiful examples. It says, Upalambhat Samacharat. Very beautiful, very important thing. So it says that the reason we do not see the waking state to be the same as a dream state, the reason I don't wake up, I continue to wallow in the experiences of the Jagrat Avastha, is because Upalambhat Samacharat. So here, Swami Paramarthananda has also explained this in his own words and so on, and he's given it some structure to it, which ETU, and he's very fond of doing these kinds of things for you to remember. But basically it means, just look at following Gaudapadacharyaji's. Upalambhat means we have a hard time seeing the non-reality of our waking state because of our experience. And I think we should look at it together. Upalambhat means the experience. Samacharat is, I feel, even more important. I can just tell you from my own life and so on. The reason we do not see this as a non-real is because it all seems to make sense. You see, here's the way to distinguish between dream state, which is my creation, and the Jagrat Avastha, which is Ishvara's creation. Because in my creation, my own dream, personal dream, I mix up things. At one time I'm here, all of a sudden the next scene goes to I'm in India. And there is no rhyme or reason. How can you suddenly go from United States to India in a matter of half a second? It's not possible to do so. But it happens. In the dream you can make up any rules and just follow it. It's like you're half drunk. In the waking state, it all seems to make so much. So Swami Dayananji, he uses the word order. And so the very order of the universe. In fact, it's interesting. At first, the order of the universe is used to understand the presence of the Creator. At first. So the same thing can really is necessary first, and then it imprisons you. How? So, for example, supposing there is a youngster who says, or someone who's an atheist and says, "Oh, there is no God, there is no order or anything." He says, "What are you talking about? There's order everywhere." As we have often explained, that the water seems to boil at 100 degrees centigrade all over the world, except at a higher elevation, which also is an order. Very predictable. The sunrise, the sunset, the seasons, the birth of the people, and so on, it all follows a certain order. And so at the very beginning, you find that this is a work of someone who's intelligent. Here Swami Maheshananji gives the idea that's interesting. You throw a ball at the wall, and the ball comes back right away at a predictable speed, depending on how hard you threw the ball at the rubber ball, hopefully, into the wall. But he says that, you remember we went through this example, this stuck in my mind. But supposing you're working for a person and you are expecting a raise and you don't get a raise. So what that means is that there must be some reason which was used by a person who, instead of an inert wall, is a conscious person. And so what happens is that your estimation that I should be getting a raise. My colleague got a raise just last month. He got a very big raise, 10% raise. And I was expecting one and I didn't get it. So this shows that the person who gives the karma phala is not an inert person. He's a conscious person. It just means that there are certain factors I did not take into account. When the person had asked me to work for some extra time, I refused because I wanted to go back to my family. He had given all this example. We had taken this in great length. So what it means is that the advent of the coronavirus and all the problems and so on and so forth that are happening, and this is not predictable. So there is a reason for it, and it has to be managed by a Chetana Vastu, a conscious person. So the karma phala is done in a very conscious manner. That conscious manner is the order of the universe. So at first, to understand the order of the universe, order in the universe, explains that there is a creation. Then, when there is now a stage where you now have to see that you are it, there is nothing else other than you. So as this is the process we have to go through, in that at first there is world dependence on the Jagat. First there is a dependence on the Jagat. So when a child grows up, you have to see who are your teachers, who are my parents, where do you get the food, how do I get educated. And you develop a certain relationship with the world. This is called world dependence. Then later on, so this is karma. Then later on it happens that you find that your life is not very happy, you're not very comfortable, and you look for some guidance from the creation. You do prayers. You start going to temples. Not everybody goes to a temple, but those who have a certain shraddha towards the Ishvara, you now do God dependence. So in the Vedas, the stages are karma, karma kanda, and then it moves on to upasana kanda. Upasana kanda means that you start doing prayers. You don't do anything. You're not searching for a job or anything, but you just close your eyes and you do prayers to Ishvara. Please help me. I've got problems in my family, and what do I need to do? And it works also. It works, especially if you do it exactly in the Vedic method. It works. And so you now become God dependent. So you say, thank you, I really appreciate it. And if nothing else, all the teachers say that the Vedas says that if you have the desire to go to a better experience in the next life, sure, Vedas says okay, that's possible too, you can do that. Then comes Jnana Kanda, and in the Jnana Kanda you have to leave all dependencies and you just want to depend on yourself. In fact, this topic will come in a very short time, so let me not go in further, but complete the thought that the same order in the universe that was necessary for you to have God dependence now becomes an obstacle to you. How? Upalambhat samacharat. Samacharat means, here Swami Paramarthananda also is very good translation, orderly behavior. Swami Dayanand Ji used to go through this in great manner. He was of course referring more to the order of the universe. But the same order of the universe now becomes an impediment to you to see that there is no reality in it. Because there is reality on it. You wake up in the morning and you have the same family that you left the previous night. The order. It's not like you wake up and you see some strangers who trying to embrace you and say, who are you? He says, oh, we've never met before. No. It's all the same. And it's predictable. Our diseases come very predictable. The body starts to get old, very predictable. Everything is all predictable. It all seems to make sense. Now all of a sudden Vedanta says, and by the way, Vedanta says, that telling you about the order of the universe and so on. He says, yes, that's exactly right. It is the order of the universe. There's no order. There's no birth, no death, no nothing. I can't accept that. And so he says that those who are not ready to embrace the birthlessness and the deathlessness and so on, for them, he says, the wise people simply talk about jati. Jati tu deshita buddhaihi. So buddhaihi, they deshita means it is teaching, the taught. The teaching is done by the buddhaihi as a jati. Yes, you keep on doing it. Why? Because upalambhat samacharat astitva vadinam, astitva vastu vadinam. Because people say, it all makes sense. How can you eliminate it? Not possible. And so here there are two things. So one is, let me see. So let's go to, so we'll continue on this in verse number 43. Ajatehe trasatam tesham upalambhat viyanti ye jati doshana setsyanti doshaha api alpaha bhavishyati. Okay, so this is interesting. So let me see if I want to make another point before I go to number 43. Yeah, I think this is be good. Yeah, I think there's another point that was made by Swami Paramarthananda that I'll bring up here. Very important point. So, point number one is that I have a hard time getting away from my sense of experience and my sense of orderly in that experience. Because of that, I have a hard time just negating all that and say there's nothing here. I cannot do that. Not easy to do that. The second reason is that from the very beginning of the birth, so this is what is called anadi. So ignorance is anadi, it is beginningless. So please, you know this by now. Beginningless means that, so for example, I gave this example that supposing my son comes to visit me in a class, and he is talking to me after the class, and then you are also there, and there you are wondering, this is one of the students. Well, then I introduce him as my son. Please meet my son. And you say, oh, that's nice, your son is coming here, wonderful, very nice. We didn't know who he was. So now I ask you, when did you not know who he was? When did this begin? Your ignorance that he is my son, please tell me, when did it begin? So you will say, what are you talking about? It never began. Ignorance never begins, because if ignorance begins, then there must be knowledge before that, isn't it? You must have known that he's my son before you tell me that I didn't know he was my son. It doesn't make sense. So ignorance is beginningless. So now, having established that, we can say that from the very beginning of my birth, in this life, really in any life, but let's just talk about this life, I did not know that I am free. I look upon myself as a limited being with limited powers, with limited time. This is how I look at myself. Okay? And so now I have a very hard time getting rid of that feeling. Why? Because, so this is exactly like I am kind of like born with the crutches. I have some disease, and from the very beginning I need crutches. Sometimes it's very hard to see. You see people with polio, even a 2-year-old who can otherwise walk, he's having crutches at the very young age. So in fact we are like that. The moment we are born, we need crutches. Crutches means what? We need the support of others. This is literally true when you are a youngster, but even when you grow up, you need the support of the world and God. So world dependence and God dependence. And you're not ready to give up the crutches. So the Shastra says, wait, make yourself strong by thinking, by reasoning, by doing viveka. It is like strengthen your muscles. And at some point you say, give it up. Throw away the crutches. And you may have a period where you're hesitating and you're not sure, and all of that is all predictable. But eventually, you just have to, you may even fall down. But then you find you really don't, the muscles may have atrophied, But if you don't really need the crutches anymore, the disease has been cured, then you are free. But I'm afraid to do so. Why? Because I am used to the support of the crutches. So this is the point number 2. So there are 2 points why I don't really effectively inquire into the waking state as being mithya. I am not able to effectively reason with myself. My conclusion continues to be that this is real. Why? 2 reasons. So now you can see that. The one reason is upalambhat samacharat. It seems so real. It seems to work. It's like with crutches now I can, this is the thing I see sometimes in the Western. They have these very elaborate motorized chairs. Amazing. Battery operated, and these people can go fast and they can turn, and it looks sort of impressive. So you feel, why should I give it up? It's working nicely. I'm able to go around. There's no problem. I can go from the car, and the car also is meant so that it can be lifted up very nicely. Very nice. But I don't want to give it up, because first of all, this is a good experience, and secondly, this is the second reason, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I may fall down. Anyway, so these are the important things to see. This is where the advanced, this is the door I have to pass through. And there are reasons why I don't immediately see the reality of myself and the unreality of the world, and these are the reasons for doing so. So in verse number 43, let's see how we do in time-wise. 8:50. Okay, I want to try to finish this. So in 43, so I will speed it up a little bit. Gaudapadacharya says that so there is a doubt amongst the people who say, I understand why the Vedas are afraid of teaching birthlessness of the experience of the world to people for the reasons you just mentioned. I understand that. But let me ask you, if you say that for a while you have to believe that there is a birth, there is order in the universe, all of that you have to say, but isn't that going to become an impediment for me to, in other words, not the reasons you mentioned, but the fact that you also confirmed it by your teaching. You see, you're not saying that I'm stupid. You are embracing me. You are giving me the respect that I need the support and so on. So aren't you confirming it? Doesn't that confirmation and support of the Shastra, does it not itself become an impediment? So in verse number 43, Gaudapadacharya says, I don't think so. It should work out okay. So he says, the disadvantages of accepting creation will not affect those who are afraid of the birthless reality and who disagree with the idea of birthlessness due to the experience of a creation. If there is a disadvantage, it is insignificant. Alpaha. Alpaha means it is not a big deal. Not a big deal. And he says that that can be overcome. That can be overcome. But it is important for us to go in a structured manner, recognizing that a person may not be ready for it. And so here in the verse number 44, he says that Upalambhat samacharat maya hasti yatha uchyate, Upalambhat samacharat asti vastu tatha uchyate. So he is giving some depth to the two important reasons, Upalambham and Samacharam. And he now gives an example not of the dream, but he changes the example to a play, or kind of like a magic show, where the magician is able to show you all kinds of forms in the clouds. Look at that. Doesn't it look like an elephant? And so on. And in fact, now we have a very more advanced world. In the modern example, you look at it as a horror movie. Any movie actually, but in the sequence of teaching, a horror movie. And horror movies are done quite well in some cases. So there is a girl who is alone, and her parents are not there, and she hears voices, doors shutting, and she is afraid. This is all in the movie. And especially, this is interesting, now Hollywood has, and Bollywood also, but I think more Hollywood is taking the first lead and Bollywood follows. These are science fiction, where things appear out of nowhere. They don't have any bodies, there are sounds, scary situations. Or if there are some creatures, there are made up creatures who can fly, who can just come from, so you can even extend this. But even if you just look at a normal horror movie, not a science fiction one, it can be pretty scary. You can say that this girl is afraid of certain sounds, and she opens up a door, and there is a scary looking man just is standing right in front of her with a gun in his hand. Wouldn't everybody gasp and say, oh my gosh? And so this is why, don't take a child to a horror movie. It's interesting here, if you are an adult and you voluntarily go to this horror movie, your friend says, oh, you've got to see that movie. It is a wonderful horror movie. We have a relative in our family who loves to read horror novels. She is very fond of doing that. She really enjoys it. And once you get accustomed to it, then you want even more of a horror to create that feeling of, and so for an adult, as Swami Gaudapadacharya says, for an adult it's not a big problem. Why isn't it not a big problem? Because you may have the experience of being scared for a while, which is okay, and people may even like it. But then moment later you can just close your eye and say, oh, this is just a movie. I'm not really afraid. But this is not true of a child. A child cannot say, oh, this is just a horror movie. The child clings to the mom or father and starts crying and says, what have you brought me? I still remember this. Our older son must have been about 4 or 5. And we had gone to, not to Disneyland, but to, I had some work to do in San Diego, a long time ago when Sanjay was, I think, 4, is like 45 years ago, 4 or 5 or something. And we took him to, so San Diego also had some rides. And so my wife, I was working during the day, and my wife, I think, took him on some kind of a roller coaster. And he came out and says, "Why are you doing this to me? I don't like it." I remember that. So those words, your mom felt very bad, that this guy was not ready for it. So, so don't try to reason with people that there is no creation and so on, and our mind cannot wrestle with it. But for a person who is serious about it and wants to understand the reality, Gaudapadacharya says it's not a big problem. And he gives this example. He gives the example that this is a in those days he was talking about the illusory elephant, but here it'll be like a horror movie. Horror movie. And it says it's okay. That you can enjoy it and so on, but it's not as though you come out and you are so fundamentally changed. My God, this, that, or the other. No. It just goes away from it. So here in number 45, he says that really speaking, now he starts to, this was all, these were examples on the process of seeing the non-reality. But in verse number 45, he says that really speaking, the appearance of birth, so let's see the Sanskritam for it. Jati abhasam, chala abhasam, vastu abhasam, tatha evacha ajala chala avastutvam vijnanam shantam advayam. Beautiful. So he says that the appearance of birth, the appearance of motion, and the appearance of objects are all nothing but consciousness which is birthless, motionless, free of materials, non-material, tranquil and non-dual. So don't be taken in by it. Don't be just taken by it. Once you know that there is in fact the adhisthana is non-changing, then all of these changes and so on and so forth really have no tangibility. No tangibility. So here, something we should sometimes, maybe not today, well, maybe we can do a short meditation also on this. So why don't we do maybe not a very lengthy meditation, but a short. It's 9:02, so we can do this for about 15 minutes, and then I will conclude with the verse number 46. Yeah, I think we can do that. Or you know what? Yeah, let's continue with that plan. Let's do a short meditation of this fact of the changingness. So, what are the factors that he mentioned? The appearance of birth, the appearance of motion, and the appearance of objects are all nothing but the consciousness which is birthless, motionless, non-material, and tranquil and non-dual. So let's do a quick meditation. Om pratasmarami hridi samspuradaatmatattvam satchit sukham paramahamsan gatim turiyam yat swapna jagara sushuptam abhaiti nityam tad brahma nishkalam aham nacha bhuta sangha. It is pointed out in the Shastra that until the adhisthana means the supporting material. You can look upon as supporting material. So in the whole world of a jeweler shop full of golden ornaments, you walk into a jeweler shop to buy jewelry for your daughter who is perhaps getting married, and displayed on the wall are all these beautiful ornaments, some to be worn around the neck, some to be worn on the wrist, hanging pendants, all kinds of beautiful jewelry, different designs. So in this view of the jewelry which you are enjoying for a purpose, you can ask the jeweler what kind of gold it is that are behind the jewels. Is it 22 karat and so on? There are different grades of gold. So all the jewels have a supporting material. This is called adhisthana. And it is very possible for a youngster or even an adult to only be worried about the design, the shape, the utility, the longevity, and so on. How brittle it is, can it fall apart? So, in Vedanta, all these ornaments are called adhyasta. Adhyasta. And the supporting material is called adhisthana. The adhisthana is independent of the adhyasta, and the adhyasta is not possible without the adhisthana. So if that much is clear, then we can see the reality of ourselves. Here, the adhisthana has to be understood. The adhisthana is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. How? Because the Sat is the content of anything as existing. So, a birth is. So when you say something is born, or that something is moving, the movement is. In this application of the example, the movement is the adhyasta. And the is the adhisthana. Similarly, the birth is, there is a birth. So the is of the birth is the adhisthana, which is you. The birth is the adhyasta, the various forms that are superimposed upon the adhisthana. So when you say a necklace, the gold is the Adhisthana, and the form of the necklace is Adhyastha. So the only thing that happens is that my non-introduction to Satchidananda makes me understand that there is a real birth, there is a real movement. So if you analyze your experiences, experienced, experiencer, changes, hunger, thirst, diseases, joy, relief, all these kinds of thoughts are all adhyastha. There is no adhyastha without the adhisthana, which is in non-changing I. I may not be able to see this to my satisfaction right away, but this is the truth. So the Karika verse says that be introduced to this fact, grasp it, study it, practice it. See that you the Sat, you always are. You cannot negate this. Your experiences may come and go, but you are always there. And you're always aware. And this awareness and isness has no limits to it. It's not as though isness and awareness only lasts for 8 hours. This is your nature, your swarupa. Unchanging, tranquil, silent. And yes, you may in fact at one point not be ready for it. You do not force it. But that is a fact. And the sooner you grow your mind and your personality to see this fact, the sooner you will be free. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this is the meaning of the verse number 45, that jati abhasam. Abhasam means the feeling of jati. Chala abhasam means the feeling of movement. So the feeling of movement and the feeling of jati and vastu abhasam. Vastu abhasam means the feeling that this is me. I'm some kind of a definite person. All this is based on the adhisthana, which is aja, achalam, avastutvam, vijnanam. This is all just Chit Swarupam. This is all just consciousness which appears to move, and this will be taken up in more detail in the Alata Shanti example, which is coming on verse number 47 onwards. So he's signaling the fact that this will be expanded on, but this is a fact. And our feeling is, what? I don't get it. Yes, that's true. You don't get it, that's okay. That's different. But I want to get it. Good. So this is verse number 45. So, and then this is concluded in this whole section of, the comparison between Swapnavastha and Jagratavastha and so on. This whole section is now concluded in the verse number 46. We says, Evam na jayate chittam, evam dharmaha ajasmritaha, evam eva vijanantah na patanti viparyaye. So he says, thus this consciousness is not born, and thus the jivas are considered to be birthless. Only those who know this do not fall into misfortune. Misfortune means that just a delay, unnecessary delay, where you have to, the whole life is really meant for this understanding. This is the goal of our life. And if I reject it or don't grasp it, I don't accept it, I'm afraid of it and so on, then I'm just delaying this fact. So this is also very close to the question that Arjuna asks Krishna, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha. Sthita pragyaha, he says, how do you define a Sthita pragya? How does he speak? How does he walk? And as you know, the very famous answer by Krishna, which completely doesn't say, well, Sthita pragya acts like this. He just sits there quietly, has a long beard. And this is what happens. You find many of these acharyas, they have this appearance that looks like they're the very wise person. And they talk very slowly. We will explain this. And this, anyway, I don't want to go through this. So his answer is, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani eva atmana tushtaha sthita pragyasta uchyate. Is the answer. Answer is that when you are not really concerned about your thoughts, not the adhyastas, you're not concerned about all the adhyastas as the ornaments, you're not fascinated by the designs and so on, but you admire the adhisthana, the very nature of the goal, of yourself, then you're done. So anyway, this is the end of this section, and from next week we will take up the example of the Alata Shanti, the firebrand example for which this whole prakarana is based on. So we will do that. Okay, with that we close the class. Om Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Go Brahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyah Prithvi Sasya Shalini Desho Yam Kshobarahitaha Brahmana Santu Nirbhayaha Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Okay. Purnasya Purnamadaya Looking for any questions? Don't see any questions. All right, with that, I take leave of you, and hopefully if everything goes well in life, we'll meet again next week. Om.